The word chaplain comes from chapel. We have a chapel on campus, but chapels were the little places along pilgrimage routes thousands of years ago that kept the sacred. And one of the things that made me really proud was that if you're a chaplain, you're the keeper of the sacred. And I think that's one of the things I do here.
You're listening to Conscious Mind, a show that explores what fascinates us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Norton. Welcome back to the show. It's good to have everyone back listening to us. Today, I am joined by a very special person, Cheryl Bundy. She is our Director of Spiritual Care at Silver Hill Hospital. And, to be in charge of spiritual care at a hospital and especially a psychiatric hospital is such a unique, important role. So I'm really thrilled to have you here with us, Cheryl. Welcome.
Thank you, Molly.
So to get us started, can you tell us when you first realized in your life that spirituality, counseling, and this entire world that you live in, what drew you to the profession?
That's a great question. It wasn't a vertical dive in. If there was a time, I don't consider myself to be a deeply religious person in many ways, but in 2001, September 11th, 2001, I was living in New York City. I was working in business, and we all know the horrors of that day. I was out. I saw the towers on fire. I walked uptown. I looked for my daughter at preschool, knowing full well that some of the parents may not be picking up their children that day. And I dwelled in this city in shock. I was in shock too. And what I did find was in this the initial haze of 36 to 48 hours, every single human being I saw, whether it was someone in my building, a random person on the street, a cab driver, someone at the grocery store, we all just glanced at each other without saying a word at all. For an extra half second, maybe a second. And somehow in that gaze was this message, hello, human, we are here. And we just somehow, in a very deep way, acknowledged each other's humanity. And I consider that to be kind of a formational spiritual experience for me. And of course, I moved on and kept living my life. And I never stopped thinking about, well, gosh, here I am. I think I'm so smart. I think I'm so together. I don't know squat about what half the world believes and what makes their lives have meaning and what orients them. And I started going to a lot of the things that were going on in New York City, because New York City is a place, if something happens, you have all these really smart, energetic, hyper-committed people who want to rally something around it. And I started going to a lot of interfaith understanding things. I went to things at mosques. I went to things in places I never dreamed I would go learn about the world. And I realized that not only did I not know very much, but that I was maybe at the tip of the iceberg and there was so much more to learn. That was the formational experience. And I had small children. I lived in New York City. Life went on. I earned an income. I was racing around. And in 2009, we moved to Connecticut full time. And I was finding my way in this transition. I had stopped my job in the city and I was really looking to do something different. And a part of me really wanted, to work in the nonprofit world. And I had done some work as a development director kind of after business. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go work in development. I'm going to go be part of a cause I really believe in. I'm going to go raise money and I'm going to feel wonderful about what I'm doing. And I was looking for the right position. And I took my two young boys, who at the time I think were 6 and 9, to a hockey game at Yale. It was the first time we'd gone to a hockey game there. And we parked in front of the divinity school. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is maybe I can go back and recreate some of that curiosity that I had, 7 or 8 years ago. And maybe I'm going to go go be a school chaplain and teach world religions and teach all these young minds about all the things we need to know about everyone else in the world. Well, life also unfolded as it did. I did complete my time at Yale. And funny, I started doing some work in chaplaincy, because to be a chaplain, you actually have to go and do time supervised in an emergency room with someone who's really supervising your interactions with people on the worst days of their life. And in my time in the emergency room, I won't say I enjoyed the work, but I really grew from the work. And I had those moments where I was with people who were truly, deeply human. And I still kept schoolwork in the back of my mind, but I kept doing work at the hospital. And my favorite work there was actually in psychiatry, probably because no one on the psych ward, at least while they were there for the most part, died. And all the deaths I had dealt with were in the emergency room or ICU. And I just kept doing my work in the psych ward and then doing my emergency work and all the things they had scheduled us for. And lo and behold, several years later in 2017, Silver Hill was looking for a chaplain, and they called up the hospital and they said, we have one chaplain who really does enjoy the psychiatric work. And that was the very nonlinear path that drew me here. But why I did like psychiatry as my favorite placement at the hospital was that you are part of someone's healing journey. I really don't regret any of my time in emergency or ICU or oncology or some of the harder units, because dealing with those really tough days and people on absolutely their worst day is certainly a growth experience for me, and I feel very privileged to have been present to people for that. But being part of someone's healing journey, while they're with you, they do get better and discharge, is such an honor. And it really kind of doubled down on my commitment to doing psychiatric work. And here I am, 7 years later.
Right. And I'm sure you still find yourself in both worlds here as well, because grief and loss and all of the things that you experienced in your training, it's not something that we can avoid as humans.
We can't.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, given that experience and that, again, here we do not have as much acute work, but people come here very much still having a loss that's preventing them from healing. And the loss is not always a death. The loss is not always, something that is horrific and tragic. It's the loss of a job. And I remind people that there's no suffering Olympics. If someone is suffering because they got a divorce, or they lost their job, or their child custody and their relationship with their child is not working out the way that the courts had originally envisioned, or if someone is not seeing them for who they think they are, that loss is a significant loss that impacts how they live their life. And so helping them say that, no, your loss is also important. Yes, there are terrible things going on in this world. We all know that. But you are suffering, and give yourself some compassion for being a human being who's suffering right now.
So you meet with our patients in times of intense loss, whether it be a death or one of these other situations you describe. How do you approach those situations? How do you walk into a conversation with someone who is in that state of just extreme shock or intense grief? What do you do?
Humility. I can never, ever replace their loss. And that's the hardest part of the job, because we're so designed to want to, fix things or make things right. I will never be able to make things right or replace their loss or get them back their job or avenge something if that's something that they are struggling with. I can see them as a human being suffering in a deep way and validate that their loss is indeed worthy of their suffering, and that we can walk through that loss together. We don't change it, but that their life and the entirety of their life and the entirety of their illness and the entirety of their treatment contains more than this horrific loss, but also really witnessing the loss. Because all grief, all losses need a witness. And it's not only witnessing what the loss was and what it entailed, and if it involved another human being, what that human being was to them, but it also involves losing the life they thought they were going to be living. And I see this all the time with people who are here for treatment, that they've suffered some loss and they thought this was my life partner forever. I had envisioned our life together, doing whatever you envisioned your life together. And now that is not the case. So the entire future you had created has been decimated. And likewise, people who feel that a job path or a career, this is exactly what I wanted to do, and my business imploded. I planned my life around this business, and it's no longer. Witnessing what the loss was, witnessing what the future loss is that they had envisioned, and then starting over with life with that loss still in it. We don't erase the loss, and that's the hardest part. But showing them that life is a whole. Life has wholeness. There are things that are built around the loss, and that their life can still contain meaningful things, even with that loss.
So being present with the person is number one. Just being there, physically being there, standing by them, and letting them lead to an extent the conversation. Where is this going for them? Because we know it looks different for everyone. So that's an incredible skill, to be able to have that kind of quiet presence with someone and just let them process how they need to process.
I say at the end of the day, I'm a witness.
So Cheryl, when you think about life and the meaning of being human, and you alluded to this a little bit in your opening remarks about September 11th and just that glance that you shared with someone and that kind of humanness of recognizing each other. What do you think it's all about? What is life?
Life is not all about rainbows and unicorns. And if you find them, please let me know. Life is about all of it. All of it. And again, as a professional witness and listener, but also a guide, when I do work with people, I have them talk with me about, tell me about some of the best days you've had. And some people say, I don't have good days, I only have not bad days. And tell me about a not bad day that you had. And we can find things in the not bad. We can find things in a good day. We can find times that they adopted their cat. We can find times that someone said, I'm hiring you for the job. Like, well, let's see what those good days entailed. And yes, we cannot recreate that moment, but we can find that those moments were deep, even if they weren't wide, and that we can continue to have depths of moments here at the hospital when you heal, and those feelings of connection that you had in the past, even if they're with someone or something that is no longer present. You are capable of experiencing that, and that moment that you had does never go away.
So it's the wholeness thing again. That there's life is not one way. Life is not without pain. Life is not without suffering. Mm-hmm. There's good times and there's low times, and to be able to see that as one interconnected thing, an experience, really. Can you talk a little bit about pain and suffering in terms of, I've always looked at it in the way that I've been taught and oriented is that pain is inevitable as a human, that it's no matter what, you're never going to go through life without any pain. But suffering is something that we have a little bit more control over in certain situations. Like the pain piece we can't necessarily stop, but can we alleviate suffering through therapy and other means? What are your thoughts on that?
You can alleviate suffering, I really do think. And I think that whole concept, as we talked about, of wholeness is very important, that a life is whole. It contains all of it. I also have people really think about, their suffering as something that you move through. There's nothing that says that how you are suffering today is how you're going to suffer tomorrow. That each day, the one thing you're guaranteed every day is a new day. I do a lot of work with gratitude, and I tell people if there's nothing you can be grateful for, you can be grateful for 3 things. Today will come to an end. Tomorrow is a new day, and you have survived 100% of your worst days, and you can do it again.
I love that. That's such a nice message. Does that resonate with people?
It does, because it's so easy to only see the inferno in front of you. And we're programmed for safety reasons to see the inferno in front of us. But look around, there are other things too.
Notice.
Yeah.
So, Cheryl, you work with multi-faith. I mean, you work with people of many different faiths and backgrounds. And, spirituality is this nebulous concept of what, that can mean something different to everyone. In the work that you do you believe that spirituality as a concept is something that's changing with time? Is it something that you see as kind of stable and as always? People talk about religion and they talk about spirituality. They talk about organized religion and just believing in something. What are your thoughts on what the spirituality of the future looks like?
I think there's a couple things in there, and it's pretty complex, and I may ramble a little bit here. But spirituality itself was our earliest instinct as a species. Back from our writings that we got from cavemen and pictures on walls of caves to the scrolls written down on papyrus across the globe, whatever we resurrected, drawings, writings, a lot of them oriented around some really basic questions. Who am I? Why are we here? I'm grateful for this. So many cave drawings and early scriptures and scrolls were about gratitude. What can't I explain? Like, why do bad things happen to good people? Why do I love? Like, how can I contain love? How many books of poetry have been written about how to contain, and songs contain love? Why do I grieve? Here we are, thousands of years and generations later, and I don't think we have the answers to those questions.
We're still asking those questions.
So I remind people that the questions you're asking have been asked by people across time. And we've put a man on the moon. We have now the Webb telescope going back billions of years, and we still can't answer these very fundamental questions about life, that living life is this big open-ended thing. But imagine if love were finite. Imagine if your ability to love were finite. Imagine if you only loved your children in a way that evolution required. Imagine this human sentience as being something that's limited. It would be really sad.
It would be really sad.
Sadly, our pain falls into that category too.
It's part of being human.
Part of being human. So when I work with people here, and I do groups, I do mostly groups with TLP, but I start out each group the same way. And I say, who knows the Latin root word of the word spirituality? Every now and then, someone who's either had me before or someone who's a Latin scholar does know. The root word is the word spiritus, which means breath.
Interesting.
So respiration, perspiration, inspiration, it's all about taking this breath. What is breath? Breath is giving you life. Spirituality, being inspired, is a fundamentally life-giving thing. And when you can enter into that, it is life-giving. People are going to leave here with a whole list of discharge instructions. You're going to go to this IOP. You're going to see this outpatient doctor. You're going to do therapy with this therapist 2 times a week. And here's the address. Here are all your prescriptions. I tell the people in my groups, my prescription's not going to be on there. But what I'm giving you is something you can take exactly in the dosage that you want, exactly in the way that you want, and know that your prescription and how you use it will change over time. But if you pay attention in these groups and you pick out the seeds that are good for you, they're only going to grow. Because it's about pointing you, even in a bad time, towards the things in your world that have meaning and will continue to evolve. And when you seek meaning, when you find meaning, it's kind of like I'm lifting weights. The first few times you're like, oh, this feels awkward, and I'm a little sore. I don't know if I want to do this again. Because sometimes we find meaning in places that aren't always pleasant. But the more you see it, the more you'll find it and the stronger that you get. And so I tell them that I'm one of those prescriptions they can use exactly how they want to use it.
I love that, especially because in the science and the work that we do, everything can be precise.
Right.
And to have that open-ended, use this how you see fit approach.
Yeah.
And wear it how you want to wear it is a freeing thing.
Yeah. And I do think, so back to your original question, spirituality in many ways has not changed. How we interpret it has. So what is religions? Religions is taking these spiritual questions and thinking about the beliefs, behaviors, and sense of belonging that certain groups have that are oriented around these questions. Does it mean you have to be part of a group to ask the question? No, it means that belonging to a group and doing practices may help you get there. So spirituality certainly predates organized religion. Organized religion as itself, as its own entity, really across traditions, continues to be a force, and I believe in many ways a force for good in the world, but how it's practiced and people who consider that sense of belonging to it or having to attend things with other people to get it, that's certainly changing. And the interesting thing is if you look at the Pew Center, which does a lot of the statistics on this, the demographic of people who self-describe as spiritual but not religious keeps growing every year. The number of people who identify as atheists or agnostics stays relatively the same.
Interesting.
It's that people are kind of leaning into, at this point in time, their spiritual selves without feeling a need to belong to something or have someone be the guidepost in their belief. I'm not a historian, but the interesting thing has been the demographic shift and that people seem to be more spiritual than ever. So in many ways, being here and giving people a sense of how this might be playing out in their life is something that they might not be getting elsewhere. On the other hand, the people who are religious here, we make every accommodation for them. And the number of religions I've had here, primarily Judeo-Christian, but we've had Wiccan patients where we've done offerings to the animals behind Barrett House. And I've had Hindu patients where we will get pictures, sculptures of little mini demigods and goddesses for them to have for devotions in their room. I think we have every kind of head covering in the chapel. And if it's important to you and it's within the bounds of what we allow on campus, I mean, you can't smoke anything or drink anything here, even if it's a religious thing, that we don't prescribe for patients. But if there is a way you can practice it and we can accommodate it, we do it. And how important that is, and again, that witness and recognizing how important that is to a patient is profound. And down to like dietary, we do whatever we can to accommodate a patient who feels that they're keeping up their spiritual practices here.
And I would like to point out to our listeners that Cheryl is just so uniquely skilled in exactly what she just said, in taking care of anyone, meeting anyone where they're at. When I teach my orientation session for new hires, I get the pleasure to talk about Cheryl for a minute and just how accommodating she is here at Silver Hill and what a special and unique person she is. And the amount of help and relief you've provided our patients and our staff over the years that you've been here has been incredible. Anytime we face any sort of tragedy here at the hospital, whether it be patient-related or employee-related, Cheryl is always the first person here to provide us support. Cheryl, this has been a great conversation, a fascinating conversation, and I look forward to having you back again in the future to talk more. We could go, like I said, we could spend hours talking about the many things that you encounter every day and this incredible work that you do. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
You've been listening to Conscious Mind on Silver Hill Radio. We'd love to hear from you. For questions and content submissions or ideas, please email us at silverhillradio@gmail.com.